All right, Joe. So welcome to another edition. So this is 5.3, Agricultural Origins and Diffusion. So we're going to try and figure out where the agriculture started. So we're going to look at the hearths, and then we're going to look at how it spread out and why it was successful in spreading to the areas that it did. Alrighty, so let's go ahead and get started. This should be pretty quick. So here are the enduring understanding, learning objective, essential knowledge. You can read this. This is, again, the stuff that comes from your course description for AP. So today we're going to be looking at the early hearths of domestication for both plants and animals. And those hearths include the Fertile Crescent, Indus River Valley, Southeast Asia, and Central America. So those are the four. And again, if in terms of the AP test, if they are mentioning it here, then it is definitely fair game for the test. All right. Remember, there's more to life than just a test. All right. So the other part is, how these things diffused across the globe, and we're going to look at trade routes like the Silk Road and also the Columbian Exchange and different agricultural revolutions. And this agricultural revolutions we're going to get to in a lot more detail in the upcoming section. So here we go. So just a real quick overview of these agricultural revolutions. And again, we're going to hit these more in the next units. But the first agricultural revolution would be somewhere around 10,000 BCE. Let's see, I've lost my, whoops. Okay, there we go. So right around, so, dadgummit, sorry. I don't want to have to start this over. Let me try and get this. Oh, this is going to be annoying. Hang on, let me pause this. All right, sorry about that. Technical issues. So, our first agricultural revolution, this is when we actually started settling down in communities. This is around 10,000 BCE. We go from hunting and gathering to planting and sustaining and generally staying in one spot. The second agricultural revolution, this is our next unit. So, but the second agricultural unit coincides with the Industrial Revolution. And so, this is when we start using mechanization to, all those machines that were invented. This is when that kind of comes into it. The third agricultural revolution is what we call the Green Revolution. This took place in the mid 1900s, kind of up, to like 1970s or 80s, something like that. And we start to see, messing with the plants themselves, hybridization, genetic engineering, more pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, uh, you name it. So a lot more chemical application to crops in order to help them grow better. And so there's a whole section on that. And then finally, we might be in this a fourth agricultural revolution. We're not really sure. Depends on how people define it, but we do see more technological developments. You might start to see more robotics or big data. Big analysis. You can use satellites to analyze things, and so drone development, machine learning, all that kind of stuff. So that might be our fourth agricultural revolution happening right now. So, but we know that we're the population from Unit Two is going to keep growing. We think again it'll cap out around 11 billion, I think it was, and so we're going to need more food. And so hopefully this fourth revolution will make it to where we can sustain ourselves in both population and in a sustainable way that doesn't harm the environment too bad to try to sustain us. All right. So let's look at this. These are just some of our basic points here. Several agricultural hearths around the world. So there are four that I mentioned earlier that you definitely are going to need to be familiar with. Different plants and animals were domesticated in each hearth. And so we're going to look at each one. And then, for purposes of the test, and again, more to life than a test, for purposes of the test, though, you're going to need to be responsible for a couple of things that come from each hearth. All right, not this long list of like 28 things that were there, but the top two or three things from each hearth is going to be important for you to know. And then finally, plants and animals spread around the world is different types of diffusion. So we'll look at contagious diffusion, relocation diffusion will be kind of how that works. All right, so let's take a look. So some of the hearths, so agriculture and civilization. So we've got the Fertile Crescent. All right, so this is, today we would call this the Middle East. This is over where Iraq is, that area. So Israel's right in here. So Our big agricultural hearth is the Fertile Crescent, the Middle East, Indus River Valley. So this is in India. All right, Yellow and Yangtze River valleys over in China, so Asia. Then we have Southeast Asia here, Papua New Guinea, Mesoamerica, all right, and then the Andes. So I think the four that were mentioned, if I'm not mistaken, in the course description thing, one of the first slides there, Fertile Crescent, Indus River Valley, Southeast, I think they said Southeast, so uh, Southeast Asia, and then Mesoamerica. So let's take a look real quick. Let me see if I can get rid of this. Hang on. Shift. All right. So let's take a look at what kind of came out of these. We'll be on this slide for a bit. So when we look at the Fertile Crescent, and so this is just for future test question here. So Turkey is right up in this area, and so when we look at what got domesticated, so these are the things that got domesticated in those areas, and by domesticated we mean that humans were able to use them and for survival. All right, and they can replicate them and things like that. And so when we talk about animal domestication, uh, you can put a pen around an animal and that domesticates them. And clearly, the vast majority of animals are not able to be domesticated. So they've tried, domesticate a rhinoceros. Good luck with that. So anyway, uh, oops, sorry about that. So let's take a look here. So in the Fertile Crescent, we've got barley, flax, and wheat. Make sure you're familiar wheat here. So they think that the first domesticated wheat probably came around where Turkey is, southern Turkey, southeast Turkey, I'm sorry. And then chickpeas, lentils, and peas. And then we have, take note, cows, dogs, goats, and sheep. So this is, oh, didn't know I could do that. So you see cows here, you're not going to see them anywhere else because our big domesticated animals, the ones that we think of like cows and horses, they come from this area. All right. So anyway, so cows, dogs, goats, and sheep. When we talk about the Indus River Valley, we've got barley, rice, rye, and wheat. So jot those down. And then when we talk about domesticated animals, they had chickens, dogs, and pigs there. All right. Uh, in Asia, so Yellow and Yangtze River valleys, we've got millet, rice, and wheat. So again, take note, wheat is growing in these different parts. Again, they think it might have originated the first domestication, but one thing that I want you to make sure you realize that all of these different hearths, these plants and animals all developed independent of one another, right? And so the corn that developed here, the maize that developed here, it was independent of all this other stuff. The wheat that developed here was independent of the wheat that developed here and was independent of the wheat that developed here. It's only through when we start connecting these areas through trade and the Europeans showing up here, that's when we start to see everything move around. But when we're talking about the hearths, these are things that developed independently. All right. And so in the Andes Mountains, potatoes, one of the big ones, beans, cocoa, and potatoes. And here's the animals here, alpacas. So we didn't have, take note, over in the Americas, no big domesticated animals. All right. The llama was really the biggest animal over here that might could be domesticated. So remember Columbus brought over horses and pigs and all that kind of stuff uh, to the Americas and introduced them when he came over. So anyway, we'll get into all that. So anyway, so Yellow and Yangtze River valleys, so rice, wheat, and millet, and then chickens, goats, and sheep were over there as well. Uh, Papua New Guinea, sugarcane, that's going to be a big thing over in this area that we'll come to find. Bananas, yams, then dogs and pigs there. Notice dogs are all over the place. Dogs been domesticated for a long time. So Mesoamerica. So this is beans, corn, so maize. Uh, let's see, papaya, squash, tomatoes. My old eyes, and then dogs, ducks, and turkeys were the domesticated animals here. So you get the idea. So again, if you back up and kind of look at this picture, this is where things developed independently, and then we get diffusion after that. Alrighty. So And these are kind of the three big grains that are grown. And just a couple quick things. So here we have wheat. So just take a look at all of the different areas where wheat is grown now. This is an immensely important crop for humans. We also have rice. If you take a look, here's nutritional value of rice. This is why it's all over the place as well. And you can see first domestication, southeastern Turkey. All right. First domestication for rice was eastern China, and then corn or maize in Mesoamerica. Take a look at this. This is an interesting way to look at it. So, of all of the corn produced, let's say this is the corn that's produced in a year, humans consume two out of what's that? 4, 8, 10. So, humans consume about 20% of the corn. Uh, Animal feedstocks consume, so when they talk about corn fed beef, that kind of thing, they grow corn to feed the beef. All right. And then ethanol products, this is actually gasoline. Uh, so when you go to the fill up your tank and it says this product contains 10% ethanol, that's what that is. And so we are driving with corn. How about that? All right, so agriculture will diffuse globally along trade routes. So take a look at some of these trade routes. So obviously, I'm not sure if you're familiar with it or not, but the Silk Road was a trade route connecting China over into this area, and this is going stretched through going into Europe. All right, and so you can see the thick red line here is the major trade route for the Silk Road, and then the thinner red line is minor trade routes. And so things that are developed here have an easy path to get over here, and that's diffusion. So this is contagious diffusion, right? Because it is going from one point. So it might go from here to here to here to here to here to here. You get the idea. And here's some of the other trade routes that were there. So, you can see that once something is developed here and the trade routes are established, it's easy to say, okay, we're growing rice here and we want to come over here and get some of the wheat that they're producing over here. This trade route allows that to happen. It allows that diffusion, right? And then if you take a look down here, the Indian Ocean trade routes, and so we can put stuff on ships and you can see it'll go everywhere. And then once we're in the Mediterranean, obviously that's a direct path into Europe. So you can kind of see where all these trade routes are. Here's Spice Islands down here. So anyway, that's one of the ways that it diffuses. So that is an example of contagious diffusion. It's going from one to the next through trade. The other big diffusion, the way of diffusion would be relocation diffusion. And that's what we mean by the Columbian Exchange. And so we go there. So the Columbian Exchange, remember, Columbus came over 1492. And so after Columbus's visit, conquering, a bunch of adjectives we could use for that. Visit seems a little bit light, so sorry about that. But after Columbus came over and Europeans started to settle over in the Americas, we started seeing this trade between these two places. And the trade between Europe and the Americas is known as the Columbian Exchange. All right. And so we can see all the things that came from the Americas. So obviously, corn came over and landed in Europe. Tomatoes, potatoes. Make sure you know those three. Put those three down for your stuff. But vanilla, beans, cacao, pineapples, tobacco, peppers. So all these things came from the Americas into Europe, right? And then from Europe came all of this stuff. All right. So citrus fruits. So we grow that here in Tucson. Grapes, bananas, sugar cane, honeybees. And then take note of this one. This is a big deal. All the livestock, so cattle, sheep, pigs, and horses all came over. Now, remember, with that same diffusion came all of these terrible things. Smallpox was quite devastating. So this was a lot of good trade. Obviously, this is a terrible thing. But so coming from Europe over, make sure you're good with the livestock here, the cattle, sheep, pigs, and horses. But notice wheat, rice, barley, and oats. So we got the grains coming over here, peaches and pears, coffee beans. And so one of the other things I want you to think about is this last question here. Why were these crops and livestock so successful in the Americas? And it is because of the similar climates. And so, coffee beans, they're not growing, we're not growing coffee beans over in this region, but they are down in South America. Okay. And so those things that had wherever the similar climates were in the Americas, those things flourish. So when we talk about citrus, we do grow citrus in Tucson. and we grow citrus down in Florida. And so it's because it has a similar climate to where they were growing citrus over there. We know this is the Mediterranean climate over here, right? And so so California shows up and they have a Mediterranean climate. So again, it's transplanting these things over here, these things, peaches, coffee, turnips, olives, onions, and finding where in the Americas those things are compatible. All right. So almost done here. Other forms of diffusion. And we'll look a little more at this later. So obviously different cuisines. So as people started to travel, their cuisines or the food that they enjoy traveled with them, and so they brought that food with them. The Green Revolution, which we'll talk about in a little bit, and we're going to learn about a guy named Norman Borlaug, who helped feed the world. There's a video called "Man Who Tried to Feed the World," and he developed a new variety of wheat, which was wildly successful in Mexico and India. There it is. Mexico and India. And so the Green Revolution has done really good things. It's brought new varieties to different areas. Now, there's going to be some downsides that we'll talk about as well in terms of fertilizer use and water use. But anyway, so the Green Revolution spread these different crops around the world. And then increasing wealth in the world has caused an increase in demand for animal protein. All right. And so the wealthier countries are, the more animal protein they eat. All right. So demand for beef, pork, and chicken has risen in LDCs, less developed countries. And so we would expect to see that trend continue. All righty. So in summary, plants and animals have diffused from hearths around the world. Remember those different hearths? Diffusion of plants and animals is so extensive that these ingredients have become integral to cultural cuisines all over the world. And so, yeah, so that's it. Just about hearths and how agriculture spread from the hearths. All right, I'll take care.